Assalamu alaikum. May the peace and blessings of the Almighty God be with all of you. My name is Daha Atwa and I have the distinct honor of serving as a master of ceremony for you for this evening. We will begin our program with the recitation of the Holy Quran by Brother Fuad. Help me welcome him, Ba'da Salawat ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. You read it for me.
Just put my father Fuad.
Brother Fuad.
He has to follow the script.
قولي my brother مش my father.
بالعربي والانجليزي ولا شو؟ ما عندك انجليزي يا رام؟ انجلش ترانسليت رايت اواي.
لا ما عندش انجليزي عندك، لا اخذوه هلا، اخذوه امبارح. اخذوه امبارح يمكن. وراه بتعرفوا سورة الحمد بيشرحها. سورة الحمد قل ولا احد بيشرحها.
عم بقول انها التزام في
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. My dad's going to get one.
لا صح النام.
ترانسليت؟ شكرا حاجة وحط لي أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أنزلناه في ليلة القدر وما أدراك ما ليلة القدر. ليلة القدر خير من 1000 شهر. تنزل الملائكة والروح فيها بإذن ربهم من كل أمر. سلام هي حتى مطلع الفجر. صدق الله العلي العظيم. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, verily we have sent this Quran down in the night of Al-Qadr, the decree night. And what will make you know what the night of Al-Qadr is? The night of Al-Qadr is better than 1,000 months. That is, worshipping Allah in that night is better than worshipping Him 1,000 months, which is equal to 83 years and 4 months. Therein descend the angels and the Jibreel by Allah's permission with all decrees. Peace. All that night there is peace and goodness from Allah to His believing servants until the appearance of dawn. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
صل على محمد وآل محمد.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
On behalf of his learned scholar, Sheikh Abdul Latif Berry, Sheikh Dr Ibrahim Kazarouni, Chairman of the Board, Hajj Kamal Sharara, and the entire IIOK family, welcome you to our nightly Ramadan English program. Before I introduce tonight's special guest and renowned scholar, Sheikh Dr Ibrahim Kazarouni, there are a few program announcements I need to make. We kindly request you silence your phones and refrain from speaking during the lecture so everyone may benefit from its educational purposes. Tonight's lecture, as well as previous lectures, can be viewed at our website, iiokonline.org. The Islamic Institute of Knowledge will be giving away 3 iPads during our English program. Participation requires individuals to pay close attention and be able to correctly answer questions related to the lecture. The correct answers will then be entered into a drawing at the end of the week for prize giveaway. Only one drawing per family, please. Following tonight's lecture, we have a question and answer session. We encourage everyone to participate. Our featured speaker, Sheikh Dr Ibrahim Kazarouni, is currently a professor at the University of Detroit Mercy teaching world religions. Sheikh Kazarouni holds a PhD in philosophy with a concentration in religion and social change. Sheikh Kazarouni studied at seminaries in Al-Najaf, Iraq and Qum, Iran. Please help me welcome to the podium Sheikh Dr Ibrahim Kazarouni with the loudest of your salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
ثانية على حب الزهراء.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
الثالثة بأعلى أصواتكم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطاهرين وصحبه المنتجبين.
اللهم صل على
محمد وآل محمد.
Sisters, brothers, friends, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. قال الله العظيم في محكم كتابه أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله لنريه من آياتنا إنه هو السميع العليم. Glorious is he who made his servant travel by night from Masjid al-Haram to Masjid al-Aqsa, whose environs we have blessed, so we let him see some of our signs. Surely he is all hearing and all seeing. Surah Isra, ayah raqam 1. The verse was revealed about a heavenly journey that the Holy Prophet made from Masjid al-Haram to Masjid al-Aqsa. I don't intend to use it in the historical context. I want to use the verse as a segue to the fact that today is the last Friday of the month of Ramadan, and since the early part of the Islamic Revolution in Iran, in 1979, when Marhum Imam Rahmatullah alayh, Imam Khomeini made the last Friday of month of Ramadan as Yawm al-Quds Day, where he brought the issue of Palestinian crisis, or the plight of Palestinians, to the attention of the world, not only specifically for the Palestinians themselves, although it was a worthy cause, but it was made as part of the conflict, the tension that exists between the oppressor and the oppressed. If you look at his statement, I invite Muslims all over the globe to consecrate the last Friday of the month, the holy month of Ramadan, as Al-Quds Day, and to proclaim the international solidarity of Muslims in support of the legitimate right of people of Palestine. I call on all Muslims to select Al-Quds Day, the last Friday in the holy month of Ramadan, which is itself determining period and can also be the determiner of the Palestinian people's fate. I ask Allah the Almighty for the victory of the oppressed people of the earth over their oppressors. So it's clear that Imam, although brought the Palestinian issue to the front, but primarily the motivating factor was the fact that there is an inherent tension in the Middle East or around the world between those who are oppressed and those who are oppressors. It begs the question, why was it necessary for the Imam, Marhum Imam, to bring the issue of Palestinians up in 1979? Although those of you who are familiar with the history of Palestine, the Palestinian crisis literally started, if not the end of the 19th century, but certainly the beginning of the 20th century. The Balfour Agreement around 1909, 1910, 1910, and definitely the Sykes-Picot Agreement of 1916 clearly defined a project called the Zionist Project in the Middle East. And so the Palestinian issue started way before. Why was it that we had to wait until 1979 to find out that somebody stands and defends the right of the Palestinians? Particularly after the Nakba Day in 1947 and 1948, it was quite clear that the Palestinians were suffering. They were expelled, 750 to 800,000 of them expelled around the world, some to Egypt, some to Lebanon, Syria, Kuwait, the rest of the Arab world. They were divided. The camps that we have in Lebanon, in Syria, to a degree in Egypt, and the rest of the Arab world still clearly contain a huge number of Palestinians. So what was it so special? What it becomes clear once we assess the situation, that the Arab world in general, they really had forgotten all, or they were trying to forget the affairs of the Palestinians. They literally sold the Palestinians for a comfort zone. You have, whether it was the Saudis, the Kuwaitis, or the rest of the Arab world, the issue of the Palestinians were pushed from the center stage into the back burner. And hence, Marhum Imam felt it was necessary to bring this issue up and confront the powers to be with the crisis of the Palestinians. Marhum Imam knew fully well at the time that the Muslim Ummah is facing a unique crisis that must be addressed. Crisis by its nature is a situation in which difficult decisions have to be made very quickly, due to the fact that if it's not made, then situation could change for the worse. But I have read people, as well as his own commentary, Marhum Imam's commentary on the Palestinian issue. It becomes clear that Marhum Imam knew the effect of colonialism in the Middle East, in the sense that not only after Sykes-Picot of the 1916, middle of the First World War, robbed the Muslim world of their land, their possessions and everything else, it has a drastic effect on the Muslim world that as a consequence of colonialism, the Muslim world lost its direction. And the clarity of the vision went out of the window. They really lost who they were and how they defined themselves. You can see this in the narratives that exist today when it comes to defining the Palestinian issue. You read some papers, well, it is Arab-Israeli issue. Other people, it is Arab-Jewish issue. Other texts, it is Palestinian problem. And none of these assessment and analysis contextualize the issue of Palestinian in what we call the global perspective. What is happening in the Middle East is not an outside, it's not happening in vacuum. It's happening as part of a global perspective. By reducing it to whether it is Arab-Israeli, or whether it is Palestinian problem, or even sometimes you hear it, that it is Jewish-Arab fight to sharing of a piece of land, which does not give the true impression of the depth of the crisis that we have in the Middle East, is nothing to do with the Jew Muslims, Jew Christian, or Jew Palestinians. Palestinians, whether they were Jews, Christian, or Muslims, they lived side by side for many centuries, if not millenniums. So what is unique about this entity that we call it Zionism in the Middle East that has become the source of the problem in the Middle East? If you look at the history of Zionism, Zionism is a nationalistic, primarily Western structured ideology that has brought into the Middle East. It uses Judaism as an excuse to justify its presence. Otherwise, it is similar to the colonial apartheid state that existed in South Africa. Similar kind of mindset. As a matter of fact, if you look at the history of Zionism, during the early 1945 and 46, leaders of South Africa, as well as the Zionists, particularly David Ben-Gurion, visited the United States and went to the reservation area where the Native Americans are kept in a small place in a corner, with a clear intent to use this kind of concept back in South Africa and in Palestine. Zionism is a colonial mindset. It has nothing to do with Judaism, has nothing to do with the Torah, has nothing to do with the fact that there is a conflict on land. It is a nationalistic, secular, poisonous mindset that comes into the Middle East, and history has proved that ever since their presence, Middle East has not seen a day of peace. So the issue that became apparent for the Imam and those people that took responsibility of making Yom al-Quds Day is a critical issue that we all have to pay attention to. Unless we contextualize the crisis in the Middle East, we are not going to give justice to what is happening in the Middle East vis-a-vis Palestinian and others. One of the consequences of the Sykes-Picot was the creation of what we call nationhood state or Arab nationalism. If you look at the history of Arab nationhood state, Arab nationhood states were created as a bulwark towards the protection of what we call the Zionist project in Palestine. Go to the speeches of the 1946 and 1947 David Ben-Gurion, when, as the first president of the Republic of Israel, as was declared, and he states that Arab states are Israel's first line of defense. In 1946, David Ben-Gurion considers the Arab to be Israel's first line of defense rather than the enemy. Clearly states that the project, the colonial project, by dividing the Muslim land into a small enclave, making them weaker, and giving the power to the dictators that are in charge of this land, literally neutralizes all effort to claim back Palestine. The only way Arab states could become the first line of defense for Israel is when the Arab states are neutralized, no longer able to defend or given up hope or given up everything for the sake of just power. You don't believe me? Go and read Al Saud's statement in 1932 and 34. A letter to the British colonial or representative in the region, that as long as the British support their coming to power, they are not going to support the Palestinians, and would leave it to His Majesty's government to decide the fate of Palestine. So part of the colonial mindset that we have in the Middle East is the establishment of nationhood state that really do not support Palestinians. They don't want to support Palestinians. Only a year ago, during this period of time, Gaza was being bombarded for 52 days, non-stop, by the Zionist regime in Palestine. Did you hear a voice coming out of any Arab land in criticism or standing up? Did you, even Egypt, during that critical time that the people of Gaza wanted an escape route to get out, they closed the exit. Today, 2 days they open it and then they close it. They do not allow medical supply. Although part of the agreement last year was that the Egyptian would allow all these things to go and the reconstruction of Gaza to start. We haven't seen anything yet. So we really need to pay attention. If we want Palestine to be liberated, Al-Masjid al-Aqsa to be liberated, we really need to pay attention to a couple of issues here and reconceptualize the whole crisis in the Middle East within the context of these two issues. Number one, when it comes to political structure, the world political structure, there is no parity between countries. What we have is a pyramid. A single military power dictates to the rest of the world, and the rest of the world, they have to follow order. So literally the world is divided between one military power that gives order and the rest of the world that has to take order. And if you do not take order, you will be considered either the axis of evil or a rogue state. How many of you remember after 9/11, the Bush, part of the Bush doctrine was that because they don't fall within the category of friend, then they all have to be considered the axis of evil. And which countries are the axis of evil? What I call the axis of resistance. These are countries that simply are not prepared to accept the dictate of the United States to the rest of the world. 2006, the Israeli attack against Lebanon. Condoleezza Rice, that happened to be the Secretary of State at the time, goes to Lebanon, to Beirut. And the famous kiss between her and Senora, in which after that she delivered the speech. I'm here to visit the moderate states, moderate Arab states of the region. And one sole correspondent had the audacity to ask, forgive me, Secretary of State, and how do you define the moderate Arab leaders? The answer was clear: those who support American foreign policy in the region. Unequivocal. The British and the French colonial mindset has changed, but the new colonial power follows the same doctrine. If you go back, just go to Google and type in American doctrine, whether it's Wilson, whether it's Kennedy, whether it's Roosevelt, whether it's Bush or Obama, they all have a unique doctrine. The doctrine rests on the occupation or direct interference in the rest of the world to protect, quote unquote, their own interest. You have a state in which its military budget exceeds the rest of the world put together. You have a state in which has 850 military bases in over 135 countries around the world. You have a state that reserves the right to violate international law, human rights, and everything else at will. The previous Secretary of State, what was her name during the Clinton, the latter part of Clinton era, that her father made the international school that I studied in, Joseph Corbell's, and she was the one who was asked whether the embargo on Iraq was it worthwhile. Albright, Madeleine Albright. She even came out to be clear after her statement regarding Iraq, when she was asked how she viewed the United Nations and the international body. She said, we treat them as long as we benefit from them. We go alone if they don't come with us, but we go with them if they are prepared to go to work with us. This kind of mindset, we have to be aware of it, otherwise we will not succeed. Don't be deceived or aloof or somehow feel that there is democracy, human right, respect for anything. Absolutely nothing. It's pure political power game. That's number one. Number two is the consequence of such mindset. That there are a number of countries in the region, and those of you who have heard Samahat Said Hassan Nasrullah al-Yawm in his speech regarding the Yawm al-Quds al-Alami, he alluded to the same fact. I probably will have different narrative, but he put it in and contextualized it differently. He pointed out that any attempt, if you want to liberate Quds, you cannot liberate it by attacking Syria. Weakening Syria is going to weaken Quds, because inherently Iran, Syria, Al-Muqawama al-Islamiyya in Lebanon, Al-Muqawama al-Islamiyya in Yemen, Bahrain, and the rest are part of what we call axis of resistance today. Any attempt to weaken one, it's an attempt to neutralize everything in the Middle East. Otherwise, why is it that Jabhatun Nasr, a bunch of terrorist organizations being trained in Amman to go back to Syria and fight, when they are injured, Israelis are taking them to Golan Heights and treating them? What's the relationship between the two? Israeli now military political advisors are working with the Saudis against Iran and against the Muqawama al-Islamiyya in Lebanon. If it was purely a political assessment 10 years ago that Salafi mindset or Wahhabis are the other side of the coin of the Zionist movement in the Middle East, now it's become clear.